Hello everyone, I am Jonathan Little. I'm here today with another fun poker hand for PokerNews.com, and if you have not already, make sure you go to my poker quiz site, PokerCoaching.com, where you can sign up for a completely free 1-week trial. Go through there, play all the quizzes, binge them, and then cancel on me. I will not be offended. I want you all to get great at poker, and the way you do that is by testing yourself consistently. So, anyway, here we have this hand where I'm raising to 300 at 50-100 with ace-jack offsuit, which is a great hand. We're playing 200 big blinds deep, so quite deep stacked. And only an unknown player in the big blind elects to call. Flop comes queen of clubs, 8 of clubs, 6 of hearts. So when determining if you should continuation bet in these spots, you want to ask yourself, how often is my opponent going to be calling me? And this spot is probably going to be a lot, right? Most people will call any reasonable bet of about 400 or less with any sort of gut shot straight draw or better, any pair, maybe even ace highs, certainly any flush draws, maybe backdoor flush draws, as you can see, a lot, right? So we're not going to get very many folds here. And then you have to ask, if I bet, am I actually extracting much value? And maybe we are a little bit here with the ace jack, but notice we have the jack of clubs, which blocks a lot of the flush draws our opponent can have, so we're not getting value from those anymore. And we have the ace high, so we're not going to get called by as many ace highs because we block that too. So I think this is a particularly bad hand to bet on this flop. Also, if we bet and get check raised, we have to fold, and with the ace high and backdoor club draw and backdoor straight draw, we actually have a decent amount of equity. So I really don't want to get check raised either. So for all those reasons, we don't have much fold equity, and my hand is okay to where I don't really want to get check raised. I think this is a spot where we just want to check behind and see what develops. I would also check with some queens here, and I'd also check with some eights from time to time so that I'm not just always folding to a turn bet. You want to make sure that whatever strategy you are using is not obviously strong or obviously weak. Like if I check on the flop with only hands I plan on folding to a turn bet with, well then all my opponent has to do is bet the turn and they win the pot almost every time, right? And that's not good. Alternatively, some people will bet the flop only with their top pairs and better. And if they bet the flop with top pair or better, well, that makes their opponent's life really easy. They should just fold unless they have a really good hand. And you don't want to do that. We discussed this thoroughly over at PokerCoaching.com so that you can think about developing your ranges and figuring out which hands you want to be bluffing and which hands you don't. And right here, with this ace-jack, I don't think it's one you want to be bluffing on the flop. So, on the turn's 4 spades. It's a pretty blank card. Now our opponent bets 400. Usually when the opponent's betting here for value, it's usually going to be with just an 8 or queen, although some people will bet with a 6. Obviously they may bet jacks or kings if they somehow have that, which is pretty impossible given they didn't 3-bet pre-flop. But this is a situation where when all the draws miss and my range to check back the flop is mostly king highs, ace highs, and marginal pairs, I think the ace-jack is just a little bit too good to fold. So I'm usually going to call in this spot and see what develops, understanding I'm often going to fold this ace-jack on the river if my opponent keeps betting, and realizing I also have some queens and eights in my range that I can easily call down with. So I definitely like the turn call there. Now on the river, it's a 6 of spades. The opponent now bets 900. This is an interesting bet. Usually people are not betting with 8s at this point. They're just going to check the 8s, looking to catch my bluffs. Our opponent would likely bet a queen for value. The real question is, would the opponent bet a 6 on the turn? And I don't know, maybe, maybe not. It's really hard to say. So the question is, should we call? Well, first thing you want to ask is, how often do we need to win to justify calling? Our opponent's betting 900 into a 1,400 pot. So if we call, 1,800 more chips are going to go into the pot. So that's going to make the pot about 4,300, right? 3,500 or 1,500 plus 3,000 is about 4,500 minus a little bit, call it 33. So 9 divided by 33 means we need to win maybe 28% of the time or so. So are we going to win about 28% of the time with this ace-jack? This is how you want to decide if you want to be hero calling quite often. Also, you want to ask, are there a lot of bluffs in my opponent's range that they could conceivably be bluffing with? Sometimes the answer is there's a boatload, and sometimes there are none. Right here, it's actually a little bit unfortunate that I have the jack of clubs in my hand because The obvious bluffs that would bet the turn and the river would be a lot of busted club draws. And having the jack of clubs in my hands means my opponent can't have jack 10 of clubs, jack 9 of clubs, jack 7 of clubs, king jack of clubs, etc., right? So, as you see there, I just easily listed off 4 or 5 hands that our opponent can't have, which means he's more likely to be skewed towards value. However, if you all know me, I'm a bit of a calling station because I think when you check back the flop or the turn, you give your opponent the opportunity to bluff and you make your range look way weaker in their eyes. So, if the opponent thinks I have garbage, and they're sitting there with real garbage, what are they going to do? Well, they're at least going to be somewhat inclined to bluff with it. And we're probably good here like 35% of the time. Remember I just said on the turn that we should probably fold this ace-jack on the river to an additional bet, but this 6 really is a very, very blank card. If the river was a 4, that's probably the best card because a lot of people aren't betting their 4s on the turn, and there shouldn't be very many 4s. And our opponent then would not value bet a 6. But in this spot, unless the opponent's value betting really thinly with maybe a 4 or an 8, I think we have a pretty easy call. If you do call here, though, and your opponent turns over 5-4 for just a super thin value bet, well, now my call is probably quite bad. If your opponent does turn over top pair, though, it doesn't really say a whole lot. You learn a lot when your opponent shows up with bluffs. If the bluffs are reasonable, you usually don't learn a ton, just that your opponent's competent. And if the bluffs are ridiculous, like say he shows up with, I mean, I don't even know. Like say he called pre-flop with 5-3. I mean, I guess that's a hand he could bet the turn with and then bet the river. So even then, that's not so ridiculous. Say he has like king 7, like some kind of absurd hand to bet the turn and bet the river. Even then, king 7 is not so absurd. As you see, I'm really convincing myself to call here because there are a lot of bluffing candidates that our opponent could have, and betting the turn and the river probably is not so insane with them. So I'm going to call here pretty much every time. I already know. And wow, we beat ace 10. So I actually don't like the bluff with ace 10 here. When it goes check, check on the flop, I usually have a lot of marginal made hands, like I said, queens, 8s, or ace high. And my opponent beats some of that ace high, the ace highs. So this is a spot where I think the opponent should actually check the river and consider check calling, or just check the turn. I mean, I think you should probably just check the flop, check the turn, check the river. Probably going to lose, but if you bet, I'm going to call somewhat correctly. And as you see here, I called with ace-jack, right? So maybe the opponent was value betting. Who knows what he's doing. This is one of these spots where when the opponent's betting, I'm not exactly sure he knew if he was bluffing or value betting. If he was value betting, it's probably wrong. And clearly if he's bluffing, it didn't work, so that's probably wrong. And whenever you have a hand that's right on the cusp, usually it's best just to check and realize you're going to lose the hand. And it's okay to lose the hand. Sometimes you win when I have ace 9 or ace 6 or ace 5. But not this time. So that's going to be it for this hand for PokerNews.com. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please let me know on Twitter @JonathanLittle. And I'll talk to you next week.